I had a friend of mine I met in Atlanta, and he was always traveling back and forth from Atlanta to Colombia, mostly Bogota. And he was like, man, you should check out Colombia if you really like Dominican Republic. And I said to him, hey, I don't know, it's kind of dangerous. I heard it was dangerous. You know, I've always heard everybody hears the stories, the fiction, the myths.
Yeah. Y'all know what time it is, man. We purpose to go on this one. Yeah.
Today, guys, we have a special treat for you. A fellow world traveler, lover of food, language, and dance. My man coming from West Philadelphia, born and raised, the Maine.
What's up? Thank you for having me, sir.
Welcome to Black Boys Abroad, even though we're fully grown men.
Right.
It's just a title, people. Don't take it too seriously. Also, this channel is for any world travelers. I hope people don't feel excluded. These are just our authentic experiences.
Exactly.
So, the Maine, we're really big about telling origin stories. I think that's the best part of superhero movies. Outside of being from West Philadelphia, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you make it from there to learning Spanish to living abroad?
Okay, well, let's see. Originally, I moved up and down the East Coast.
Okay.
So I went to DC, I went to Atlanta, and I went to Charlotte, and back to Atlanta.
Wow. Okay.
Now, learning Spanish, my history is in 2007, I took a first trip to the Dominican Republic. And I enjoyed it so much, I said, what's the one thing I can do when I come back here to enjoy it and make my experience that much more pleasurable? And I said, I gotta learn to communicate with the people. I can't be around people who look similar to me. I can't be intermingling with people and pulling out a phone and trying to translate.
Pass as Dominican, not that you want to, but you would pass off the eye test, right?
Right. So what I did, I said, that's it, I'm learning Spanish or die. I know people said, wow, that was pretty drastic. Yes, it was pretty drastic because I was like, what do I have to lose? There's nothing you can lose from learning a language. And you know, I became somewhat of I'm still am today, somewhat of a fanatic in learning languages. I'm starting to learn, sharpen up on my Arabic now. But so it was a journey. It took me about, I would say three and a half years before I got really comfortable and fluent in speaking the language. Okay. And then after years of building up, I found a place called Colombia. So how did I migrate from being a Dominican Republic person who actually lived there for a moment in time to coming to Colombia? I had a friend of mine I met in Atlanta, and he was always traveling back and forth from Atlanta to Colombia, mostly Bogota. And he was like, man, you should check out Colombia if you really like Dominican Republic. And I said to him, hey, I don't know, it's kind of dangerous. I heard it was dangerous. You know, I've always heard everybody hears the stories, the fiction, the myths. And he's like, nah, man, don't worry about that stuff, man. He said, you gotta have boots on the ground to really actually know what's going on. And I said, okay. So I went with him. The first time trip was 2015. And I was between Bogota and Medellin. And I said, that's it, bro. That's it, bro. It's a done deal. Sign me up, sign the contract. Yeah. And that was it.
So during that 3-year time period, did you have a combination of like living abroad, living in the States? Like how did you go about learning the language in those 3 years?
Okay. I didn't live abroad until actually 2019. Well, I had a brief year in about 10 months that I lived in Dominican Republic after I graduated from college in 2009.
Okay.
But then after that, 2009, I came back to the States, and then I was really like, I didn't start living abroad until actual 2019. Now, in between 2010 and 2019 or 15, I was visiting Dominican Republic at least 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay.
And then when I discovered Colombia, I started to incorporate, which is 2015, I started to visit Colombia at least twice a year.
Okay.
And Dominican Republic twice a year. So it became at least 4 times a year. And my visits would be anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. And I learned living in the US. So it wasn't like, oh, I came here and it improved when I came here full time, but in the US is when I really learned my foundation and got the fundamental grip of it.
So now I know you have a YouTube page where you actually teach Spanish and English.
Yes.
What is that? The name of that page?
Let's Learn Spanish TV.
Okay, Let's Learn Spanish TV. Please subscribe to his page. So during this 3 years, you're learning Spanish. What was your approach? Like, is learning grammar? Was it situational? How did you go about actually learning the language?
Okay, so my approach was both grammar and situation. So if I would say, okay, I need for you to order me some pizza.
Okay.
Okay. So then I would say, okay, how do I say that in Spanish? I need for you to order me some pizza. So, necesita que tú me pidas pizza.
Okay.
So then I would just write a script down in English and then translate to Spanish.
Okay.
Like that. And then I had a workbook, and with that workbook, I would do the exercise in the workbook. In my conversation, I would pick out things from the workbook and see how the structure of the language actually worked. I want to buy food for you.
Okay.
So what you would say in Spanish is, for you, I want to buy food. So then I would think, okay, I would change my mind to think in the Spanish sentence structure as opposed to the English sentence structure. So in English, we put the, it's a grammatical term. I'm not a grammar Nazi, but I'm just making people understand certain things that you put in different sentence
like
order.
The subject-verb agreement?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So it would be the indirect object pronoun. Okay. So if I say, I want to buy food for you, it's in English, right? So in English, we put the for you at the end. But in Spanish, you put it second after the I want for you to buy food.
Okay.
So that's how that works. And then I start to train my mind to think in the Spanish sentence structure. So I would go out and practice it. I would hear people and I would expect them to say certain things. And then when it popped up and they said exactly how I was anticipating, it built more confidence for me. And I just kept writing conversations in my mind. Eventually I stopped writing conversations and reading conversations. I would just have these conversations with myself. Okay. And then I would go out, practice with people, and
then you come back to the drawing board.
I'll come back to the drawing board like, hey, this is working.
Okay. So it was interesting. Off camera, we were kind of talking about how language is like working out. I've actually always equivocated to playing basketball. So think about it, if you've never played basketball before, you want to start off with layups. You want to start off with dribbling. You want to start off with free throws before you get to three-point shots, before you get to half-court shots. But guess what? After you do that a little bit, maybe play one-on-one with somebody.
Right, right.
That could be your teacher. And then you want to go out into like a real life situation. That's like going to the store. That's like playing 5-on-5, 3-on-3.
Right.
But guess what? You're going to learn that you're horrible. So you're going to go back to the layups, go back to the free throws, practice it, get better at it. Before you know it, you're doing reverse layups. Right. But you don't get there unless you kind of do that process of always going back to the basics.
Exactly. Never forget the basics.
Never forget the basics, but also put it into some use.
Exactly.
And you're going to make mistakes. I think I watched a video the other day. It's like you're always going to be the worst at something the first time you do it. There's not many things in life that you're actually going to be better at something the first time. Right, right. Cooking, exercise, language. Right. Dancing. Exactly. First time I danced salsa, trash.
Yeah, yeah. First time I ever tried to dance salsa, man, I was.
Your salsa's good, man. I was impressed.
It's been a journey, but believe me, the way I dance now, from when I first started, people wouldn't believe that I started from -0. I didn't even start at 0. I started from less than 0.
I don't like how they don't give us credit for actually learning the dance. Like, oh, well, you black, so you just figured it out. I'm like, no, like I'm not from a Latino background. I had to learn salsa, bachata, champeta from scratch.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
But no, I think a lot of it is, and you can confirm this, and I'll let you go in more depth. You can't learn the language without understanding the culture.
Exactly. Absolutely. If you really want to get your language skill set to a high level in any language, you got to incorporate the culture into your lifestyle. You got to incorporate the culture into your language learning as well. Otherwise, you'll just be mediocre. Yeah. But if that's what you want to, if you strive to be mediocre, strive to be mediocre. But I wasn't raised to strive to be mediocre. I was always instilled in me, you have to be the best at what you do, because you're not going to get a second chance to make a first impression. Being from where you come from, you have to excel.
No, you want to strive for greatness. And so I always encourage people to pick a favorite dish from a Latin American country if you want to learn Spanish. Also, kind of figure out your Spanish identity. Now, I'll tell you something funny about the main. He sounds Cuban when he speaks Spanish, which makes sense because he learned a bulk of his Spanish in the Dominican Republic. And I got a strong 30 seconds Dominican. I used to have a strong 3 minutes, but I haven't lived there in 7 years. but I used to have a really strong 30 seconds in Dominican Spanish, and I still got a little bit of the greetings, but you sound extremely Cuban, Dominican-esque when you speak, and that has a lot to do with your identity, and you probably like listen to a lot of the music, you probably watch a lot of the movies, and also the food. That's going to be part of it as well. And Colombian Spanish doesn't always match our personalities.
Right.
And so it's easier to get along with a more Caribbean style. And that's one of the reasons why I actually like living here on the coast.
Okay.
Because it's more in my vein of like how I feel as a person.
Okay, nice.
So how do you feel about that? Like how have you gone about learning the culture, studying the culture?
Well, it's interesting you say that because the first thing I did was, one thing about learning the culture is learn how to cook a dish in Spanish, pollo guisado. And what I did was... Fire. It's one of my favorite dishes. And what I did was I would learn to cook it, then I would keep cooking and keep talking to myself as I cooked it in Spanish, of course, describing how I'm doing it as I'm doing step-by-step process.
So do you cut the skin off?
Yeah, I take the skin off my chicken. I cut the skin off my chicken.
Take the skin off, right? You cut the little slits in it, throw a little bit of lime on it, lemon.
Well, I clean it with vinegar and lime,
okay. All right, yeah. Do you have to use the sugar when you're doing the searing part?
Sometimes I use sugar, and then at first I always use the sugar I put there, get it brown and put it in there. But then I stopped using sugar and I switched up some ingredients a little bit. So now I use curcuma, turmeric.
Okay.
And I just made a little adjustment, what you would call add my own flavor, mi propio sabor.
Sí, claro. No, that's dope. Now, it's funny you said pollo guisado because it's one of my favorite dishes. One of the first things I learned. And do you make it, do you do plátanos with it, plantains? Or?
No, I usually do some vegetables and white rice and beans. Yeah.
Cool. Now, Dominican food is fire.
Yeah. They have a good spice. And I would say Cuban food, Dominican food, the Caribbean, Latin food, they really have good spices and flavors. And here in Colombia, depending on where you are, is where you're going to be able to find different types of food with flavorful food. And there's a myth that Colombia doesn't have good food. No, it's not Colombia don't have good food. You just don't know where to find the good food, because of course most people who come to Colombia are only in the tourist areas.
Yeah.
So they're catering towards you. Oh, you're used to eating KFC, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, or Domino's, so that's what they're going to put all those restaurants around the tourist areas to get the tourist dollars.
And if they do have a Colombian food, entre comillas, it's going to be super watered down.
Yes.
I had this experience in Panama, and I was there probably like 6-7 years ago, and I was going to all these restaurants trying these famous Panamanian dishes, and they were all trash. So I hit up my boy Javier, like, Javi, like, I don't like this food here. He's like, where you at? I told him, Casco Viejo. It's like, that's why. He said, go to Colón. Go to Colón, and I went to Colón. I thought I was in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And they had a dish called rice and beans, and that's how they say it. They don't say arroz con frijoles. They say rice and beans in English, and it was, I don't know what they put in it. It was magic. But I had to go to a different area. And it would be the same, I think if you go to the States and you go to like KFC and you want soul food, well, yeah, they're gonna have mac and cheese.
Right,
they're gonna have fried chicken,
but
it's not gonna be your grandmother's fried chicken and mac and cheese.
It's not gonna be real soul food.
It's not gonna be yams. You gotta go to Sweetie Pies in St. Louis or something like that. So with that said, so you got the food down. How did you learn how to dance? Like, did you take classes one-on-one? Did you just watch YouTube videos?
Well, when I was in the States, I tried to learn to dance, and like I said, I was terrible. I was horrible, man. I don't want to. I was no good. So what I was good was learning bachata. Bachata came easy for me. So I mastered bachata. I was a bachata expert, but when it came to salsa, I was afraid actually, because I just couldn't get the count. I just couldn't really get it. Then I moved to Cali, Colombia. And I just said, you know what? I'm in Colombia, bro. I gotta master salsa. I said, it's calling me. I love it. Why can't I get it? So I enrolled in Academia Sabor Manicero in Cali, Colombia. And I may have been taking classes for about, I'd say almost 3 weeks, maybe a month. And then after that, you couldn't stop me. Then I was showing off and everything. I said, yeah, I'll challenge people. I'll be like, yeah. And it's funny because when I tell people this, they don't believe me. I dance salsa better than 65% of the people in Medellin, Colombia. And I put that challenge out there for anyone. When you come see me, let's see how good your salsa is compared to mine. Even if you was born and raised in Colombia, let's get it.
Hey, you heard it here first, folks. He's making a challenge. I don't know if we're going for 50,000 pesos, 100,000. We balling out here.
200,000 pesos.
I'm not making that challenge personally. I'm probably better I'm probably better than 35%. No, I would say Medellin, yeah, 50%. Easy. No, it's not known for its salsa, I'll be honest. Every time I dance in Medellin, they're like, oh, tú eres caleño. I'm like, no, I'm not from Cali. I learned some moves in Cali. I actually prefer Cuban style, casino style salsa. But I need to start taking up lessons again. I'm actually gonna put some links about some classes if you ever here in Colombia where you should go if you're in Medellin, Barranquilla, because I have some friends that indulge in those things and that's how they make their money. So you picked up salsa, you're challenging the world now.
Yes.
I'm sure you're better than like 80% of the people in Bogota. They just, sorry to talk about people in Bogota, they just can't dance. These are stereotypes, folks. I'm sure there's people in Bogota that could, clean the floor with us, but generalities. All right, so you got the food down, you got the dance down. When did you feel like you mastered the language? Was it in those 3 years or did it take longer? Because I've heard your Spanish and I would say your Spanish is better than mine. And I don't say that about many expats.
Right.
When did you feel like you got to that mastery level?
I feel like I got to the mastery level when I would speak, when I actually came to move to Colombia and people would say, where you from? And they said, where you from, the Caribbean? You got like a Caribbean. And when native Colombian speakers ask me where I'm from Caribbean because sound like I got a Caribbean accent or a Caribbean flow with my Spanish, then I said, I've achieved a level that I want to achieve. Now, I'm not perfect. I learn learn things all the time. I don't even know my first language on a mastery level. I would say in my first language, I could say I'm a level 9. I just started throughout most of my life, to be honest with you, until I started teaching English here in Colombia, I would say my English native level was a level 7.5 to 8. But I had to learn more things about English so I could teach it. So I'm on level 9 with English now. I would say I was on the level 7 or 6.5, 7 with Spanish. And so now since I got better and I learned more things, I would say I'm about a level 8, 8.5, 9. I'm not perfect, but I'm not perfect in any language.
Okay. And that's interesting that you say that about English and Spanish. I feel the same way. I'm not an English major. People always assume that I'm an English teacher because I work in education in Colombia, but I taught social studies. And this goes back to a point, and I've heard you talk about it before. Being a native doesn't qualify you. So when you guys are looking for Spanish classes, a lot of classes are just cookie cutter, right? One size fits all. They're gonna have you learn the alphabet, which I don't know if it's really important. I think learning the vowel sounds first is more important because you kind of already know the alphabet, right? It's just almost the same letter system. They're gonna teach you way too many grammar rules at first.
Yeah, you don't want to learn too much. Right.
And they're not gonna teach you situational things that cater to your needs. Do you need this for business? Do you need this for socializing? Do you need this for travel? I think those are the differences when you can find the right teacher. I just started taking Spanish classes this year. My last time taking Spanish classes was my first year learning in 2010. So I had like a 12-year gap between taking classes. And all I do with my current teacher is I read in Spanish and she corrects me at the end, like my pronunciation.
Right, good, that's good. Do you record your classes?
Yes, we record the classes. And I'm able to go back and like kind of see the nuances and she, and then there's certain things that you just struggle with because it's like, all right, these are just sounds we don't have in English.
Right, exactly.
And for years I had to like work with the rolling the R's. But yeah, being a native speaker, I'm not qualified to teach anybody English. I could help you with your English if you already know it, but I can't teach you from zero. You can, and so hopefully if there's any Colombians watching this and you need a teacher, you know where to find them.
Yeah. Y'all know what time it is, man. We represent to go on this one. Yeah.